Good morning everyone. Welcome to class 14. Today we are going to discuss third part of current electricity. You are getting videos daily. I hope the topics I am discussing in those videos are understandable. So with that hope I am proceeding further. Before going to start the topic, let me revise the topics what we studied in previous class. In current electricity 2, we studied about mobility of electrons, drift velocity, relation between drift velocity and current using electron theory of metals, relation between current density and drift velocity, deduction of Ohm's law from electron theory of metals, temperature dependence of resistivity, variation of resistivity with temperature for a conductor at higher temperatures and at low temperatures, and for semiconductors, combination of resistances, series and parallel, internal resistance of the cell, terminal voltage, relation between internal resistance and terminal voltage and EMF of the cell, combination of cells in that series combination, and when it will be used, what are the conditions to be applied to get maximum current in series combination, and in parallel combination, what are the conditions we have to apply to get maximum current in parallel combination. Now we are going to see the third part of current electricity. In this we are going to see the applications of Ohm's law, where we can apply Ohm's law. First one is conventional domestic fan regulator. We are using this fan regulator daily. So in that current through the fan gets regulated by controlling the resistance of the regulator circuit. This regulation can be done with the help of Ohm's law. Second one, in voltage divider circuit, we can divide the source voltage across the output resistance. This voltage divider circuit we can study in higher studies. This voltage specifically, this voltage divider circuit can break the voltage into number of parts, where one part of the voltage will be flowing across this output resistance. One part of the voltage can be applied at output resistance. To calculate that particular voltage, we can apply Ohm's law. In electronic circuits, we required to supply specific voltage across the different electronic elements. To supply that specific voltage, we have to calculate the voltage by applying Ohm's law only. And finally, in DC ammeter and other DC measuring instruments, we can divert current. So we can apply Ohm's law in that case. So these are the main applications of Ohm's law. Basically, Ohm's law can be applied to electrical components mainly. Limitations of Ohm's law. Ohm's law cannot be applied in all the cases. The condition where Ohm's law is applied is temperature should be kept constant, but it is not sure that when current is flowing through the conductor, its temperature remains constant. Always the temperature value changes. So Ohm's law cannot be applied in that case. That is first one. So in order to apply the Ohm's law, we have to maintain the temperature of that conductor to a low value. Next one, it cannot be applied for different types of semiconducting devices. These diodes are called semiconducting device. Diodes does not obey Ohm's law. If you plot a VI voltage current graph for the diode, it will not be a straight line. Instead of straight line, it is a curve. We are going to see this in the next slide. Yes, this is the graph for voltage and current for a given conductor. This already we have drawn in lower classes. We can calculate the resistance using this one. Here also we can calculate the resistance, but the variation of voltage and current will not be a linear one. Instead of a linear straight line, it will be a curve. So in this case, Ohm's law cannot be applied. Now we are going to see the heating effects of electric current. Already this heating effect also we studied in lower classes. So when current is flowing through a conductor, kept across a certain potential difference for a given time, the work done to move the charges will be stored as potential energy. So work done is equal to voltage into current into time. So already we studied W is equal to VQ in the previous topic, V into charge of the charged particle. So W is equal to V into Q. In place of Q I can write I into T, current into time. So the work done can be transferred into the amount of heat produced. So heat produced is equal to Vi into T. So if I apply Ohm's law, VIT in place of V, if I write IR, V is equal to IR, that becomes H is equal to I square RT. So the amount of heat generated when the current I is flowing through the conductor is depending on these factors. First of all, heat liberated is directly proportional to square of the current, resistance directly proportional to resistance of the circuit, and time of flow. If more amount of the current flows across the conductor for a long time, then heat producer will be more. Similarly, if the resistance of the component is very high, means the heat produced when the current is flowing through that also will be more. So when large amount of current flowing through the component, so heat produced will be more. This equation we got from Joule's heating effect. So calculation of electric power, this also we studied in lower classes. Power can be defined as a time rate of doing work done or energy per unit time. So when a battery delivers energy, the circuit element like a resistor can release energy as heat. So how to calculate that amount of power dissipated? So electric power is equal to voltage into current. So power, we know that work done, W is equal to VIT. So power is equal to work by time. So VIT by T, the time factor gets cancelled, so it becomes voltage difference into current. So I can write power P is equal to VI. If I apply Ohm's law, V in place of V I can write IR, V is equal to IR, so it becomes I square R. So again if I apply Ohm's law, replacing this V by R, I can write V square by R. So first equation relates power, voltage and current. Second equation relates power, current and resistance. Third equation relates power, voltage and resistance. So these are the units for the given terms used in these equations. This is a small example where we can observe the power consumption of two bulbs. You are given any electrical appliance, if it is made to work under a given voltage, the components, the elements should work with the same potential value. They are allowed to work under the same potential value. I already said in series combination actually potential changes, but here the components are designed in such a way that all the components should work with the same potential with the different resistances values. So here we are assuming two bulbs which are having different power values, 40 watt and 60 watt. 40 watt is the first bulb, 60 watt is given to second bulb. So power is equal to V square by R. Here both are working with the same potential, so I have to use this relation P is equal to V square by R. So power consumed by this 40 watt bulb is inversely proportional to resistance. Similarly, power consumed by the 60 watt bulb is inversely proportional to R60. So power is less, power 40 watt bulb power is less than the 60 watt powered bulb, but the resistance of 40 watt bulb is more when compared with resistance of 60 watt bulb from this equation. So power consumed by this 40 watt bulb I can write by using this relation for V square by R, so which is equal to I square into R naught. As the resistance of 40 watt bulb is more, the power consumed by this 40 watt bulb is more. That's why the bulb will glow with brightness. But the power consumed by the 60 watt bulb, the resistance of 60 watt bulb is less, so it can consume less amount of power. So that's why the second bulb is dim. It will not glow. So power consumption can be calculated depending on the resistance of that particular device. If resistance of the device is less, power consumption will be more. It can utilize more amount of power from the source. So here the resistance of that 60 watt bulb is less, so it cannot consume more amount of power from the source. That's why this 40 watt bulb is consuming more amount of power, so it is glowing bright. So these are the effective power calculations for different components connected in series and as well as in parallel. So assume that different components will have the power values P1, P2, P3 having resistances R1, R2, R3. I can write R is equal to V square by P. We have the relation P is equal to V square by R. I am writing R is equal to V square by P. So R1, R2, R3 I can calculate, and for every appliance in series combination, effective resistance will be R1 plus R2 plus R3. I can divide this entire equation with V square. So R by V square is equal to R1 by V square plus R2 by V square plus R3 by V square. So I can get here 1 by P is equal to 1 by P1 plus 1 by P2 plus 1 by P3. So the power consumed by the appliances when they are connected in series, the effective power consumed by the appliances when they are connected in series is equal to sum of the reciprocals of the individual power consumptions of these appliances. So I can write P 1 by P is equal to 1 by P1 plus 1 by P2 plus 1 by P3. Altogether, if you see this equation, when the appliances are connected in series combination, the appliances will consume less amount of power because effective power is less when compared when they are connected in series combination. So this is parallel combination. In parallel combination, I can write 1 by Rp is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. Replacing R with V square by P1, I can take 1 by Rp is equal to 1 by V square into P1 plus P2. Power consumed is equal to V square by Rp. So V square into 1 by Rp. What is the value of 1 by Rp means? We can write this value here. So P is equal to P1 plus P2. When the components are connected in parallel combination, the effective power consumed by that appliances will be the sum of individual power values. So the power consumed by the appliance will be more when they are connected in parallel combination, and power consumed by the appliances will be less when they are connected in series combination. So this is maximum power theorem. It states that DC voltage source will deliver maximum power to the variable load resistor only when the load resistance is equal to source resistance. So here the cell will have some amount of internal resistance. If that internal resistance is equal to external resistance, then power transferred by that cell will be more. It can serve more amount of power. That cell can serve more amount of power when its internal resistance is equal to external resistance of that load. So that is maximum power theorem. So these are the applications of heating effects of electric current. Already we studied about these applications in lower classes. Electrical iron heater and a toaster works under this heating effect of current. Alloys nichrome, nickel and chromium can be used as electrical heaters because they will produce large amount of heat energy with less amount of current. Nichrome has very high specific resistance. So even though at very high temperatures it cannot oxidize. This is very important concept relating to this current electricity. High voltage power transmission. We are using the electrical cables, the wires coming from the poles into our houses. That pole contains the wires which are operating at very high voltages. Why they have given very high voltage value means go through this reason given here. The advantage of transmitting electrical energy at high voltage is that it minimizes the power loss due to the resistance in the conductor. The reason behind that one is the power dissipated as heat. The reason behind that one is, if you go through the relation between power and current, I can write P is equal to I square R. The power loss in the transmission line is proportional to I square. Power loss in the transmission is proportional to I square. The relationship between power and current and voltage is given by P is equal to VI. Here V is inversely proportional to I. If you keep power as constant, V is inversely proportional to I. If voltage here voltage is inversely proportional to current. Increasing the voltage decreases the current. If current value decreases, power consumption, power loss also decreases because P proportional to I square. So that's why the reason behind that one is, if voltage applied will be at a very high value, then current will be less and power loss also will be less. The second reason behind that one is, so the resistance caused by the motion of the electrons in the conductor. So the cables what we are using are very long cables we are using. If we use very long cables, the resistance offered by that cable also will be more. If resistance is more, power loss is also more. In order to decrease the resistance, if you use cables having a higher cross sectional area, then it would increase the weight of that line. If you use very broad cables which are having very long, high cross sectional area, that will increase the weight of this line, and it is not at all preferable to support that cable. So we can't increase the area of cross section of the cable. Instead of increasing the area of cross section of the cable, the only one point we can apply here is voltage should be transmitted with very high value. That's why we can use high voltage power transmitting lines to reduce the power loss. Another part of this unit is Kirchhoff's laws. It is a very important part relating to this syllabus. Before going to study about the laws, we can go through the advantages of using this Kirchhoff laws. They can be used in the analysis of closed and complex electrical circuits such as bridge or T networks, in which calculating voltages or currents within that circuit becomes difficult using Ohm's law. Bridge network means we can have a combination of different cells and different resistances which are connected in a complex structure. Bridge network or T network, both are same. So they are connected in complex networks. In that case, Ohm's law cannot be used to calculate the current and voltage values. So we have to use Kirchhoff laws to find out the voltage and current values. There are two laws defined by this Kirchhoff. First one is Kirchhoff's current law. So the total current entering into a junction is equal to the total current leaving out of that junction. In simple words, we can say the algebraic sum of all the currents entering and leaving the node means junction, must be equal to 0. So if you see this diagram, I1 is entering into the node means junction, I2 is entering into this, I3 is also entering. I4 and I5 are leaving out of the junction. So I can write the currents entering into the junction as positive, I1 plus I2 plus I3, equal to the currents entering out leaving out of this junction as I4 plus I5. So if you want to write it in algebraic sum, I1 plus I2 plus I3 minus I4 minus I5 equal to 0. Here the minus sign indicates that the currents are leaving out of the junction. That is Kirchhoff's current law. Next one is Kirchhoff's voltage law. Voltage law is also same. So in any closed network, the total voltage around the loop is equal to sum of the voltage drops within the same loop. Here voltage drop across AB is VAB, VBC, VCD and VDA. So the total voltage drop across this closed loop is VAB plus VBC plus VCD plus VDA is equal to 0. To understand these two laws, we can use a Wheatstone bridge to calculate these voltage values and current values. So Wheatstone bridge is a complex circuit in which different resistance values are connected in the form of a trapezium, and the power will be supplied to these four resistances using a cell which is connected outside this loop. So here this is the galvanometer which can be used to measure the current flow on left side, which can be used to measure the current flow. In order to get same amount of current on left and right parts, we can assume that current flowing through this galvanometer will be 0. So here current starts from this cell entering into the point A. So it is dividing into I1 across this P and I2 across this R. Now at B it can be divided into again two parts, I1 entering into the B, forming Ig into G. Here Ig is indicated, you can see Ig leaving out of this B and I3 leaving out of this B. Similarly D, I2 is the current I2 is coming from A, passing through this R and entering into the D, and the Ig, current Ig from this galvanometer is entering into D. So I2 plus Ig both are coming into the junction D, and the current I4 is leaving out of that junction. So here Ig, if I consider Ig value as 0, because no current is flowing through this gap, then I1 equal to I3. That's why in this diagram it is given both sides with I1 and I2 in both sides. In place of writing I4 directly, he has given I2 itself. So if I apply Kirchhoff's current law at B, I already mentioned I1 is entering into B, so I1 equal to the current leaving out of this B is Ig plus I3. If Ig is equal to 0, I1 is equal to I3. Similarly, I2 is entering into D and Ig is entering into D, and I4 is leaving out of this D. So Ig, if I consider it as 0, I2 is equal to I4. Now applying loop, second law to this loop ABDA. Proceed the loop in anti-clockwise direction like this. If you proceed this loop in anti-clockwise direction, the current into resistance P, I1 into P, when we are moving in anti-clockwise direction, this I1 is flowing opposite to us, so I can consider minus I1 into P. Here it is indicated minus I1 into P, and I am coming down and flowing along with I2, so plus I2 into R. The voltage, this voltage drop across here, I can write as V is equal to I2 into R from Ohm's law. So plus I2 into R. And when I am moving up, the galvanometer current is flowing down, so I can write it as minus Ig into G, so equal to 0. The total potential drop across this loop is equal to 0. So again I am explaining, if I consider the anti-clockwise direction, it is a standard notation. When I am proceeding in anti-clockwise direction, the current is coming in opposite direction, so I can write minus I1 into P plus I2 into R minus Ig into G equal to 0. So here Ig I am considering it as 0, so I1P is equal to I2 into R. Similarly, if I proceed for the next loop ABDCB in anti-clockwise direction, minus I3 into Q plus I4 into G plus Ig into G plus I4 into S. So if you cross check this equation, the same one will come. So Ig equal to 0 and I3 equal to I3Q equal to I4 into S. So if you calculate the ratio, I1P by I3Q and I2R by I4 into S, I2 is equal to I4 and I1 is equal to I3. These two gets cancelled. So the result will be, so the I1P by I1Q, so P by Q is equal to R by S. This is the balancing condition for Wheatstone bridge. This balancing condition is used to determine the unknown resistance of the given network when all the other resistances are known. So in order to apply this Kirchhoff laws to more complicated networks, we have to follow some sign conventions. So what are the different sign conventions to calculate EMF? First one is EMF should be considered positive when we are traveling from negative terminal to positive terminal inside the cell. If you follow in this direction, the EMF should be considered positive, from negative towards positive for this cell. Similarly, EMF will be negative when we follow from positive towards this negative. If you are following in this direction, then the EMF should be considered minus. Similarly, IR, travel opposite to the current direction, as we did it in a previous session. When we are moving opposite to the direction of the current, we can consider IR when we travel opposite to the direction of the current. When we travel opposite to the direction of the current flow, we can consider plus IR, and when we travel along the direction of the current, we can consider minus IR. So once if you start traveling according to these sign conventions, we have to apply till the end of that calculation. we are not supposed to change these sign conventions at the middle of that calculations. To understand these calculations clearly, we can see one of the example. Here I have given a simple circuit to find out the current flowing through this circuit. So if you want to proceed in anti-clockwise direction, you can proceed here. So if I follow this anti-clockwise direction, so current is starting from negative terminal towards the positive terminal. So this 20 should be considered plus. So there will be no change in considering clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. Here in the problem, the solution is given by considering this clockwise direction of the current. If you want to follow anti-clockwise direction, that is also correct, but you will get the equation in opposite sense. Anyhow, the answer will be same. So if you start doing the calculation from this 20 volt battery from anti-clockwise direction, then this 20 will be plus, so 20, and here 10 ohm current, so plus 10I, and here we are moving from negative towards this positive terminal of the cell, so plus 20, plus 12, here we are getting opposite, so plus 12, plus 5I, plus 5I, again plus 5I equal to 0. So 20 plus 10I plus 12 plus 5I plus 5I equal to 0. So here you are getting opposite. Anyhow, both the values are same. If you simplify this equation, you will get I is equal to minus 1.6 ampere. This minus indicates that the current flow will be in opposite direction. Here it is a given reason. Here the direction of current is actually opposite to the clockwise direction. So if you follow in anti-clockwise direction, you will get positive sign. So try to simplify that using anti-clockwise direction and find out the answer. So if possible, in next class we will see few more examples relating to this calculation of current values, and we can further proceed further for other topics. Thank you.